story. All of us, I mean, you know, we hang out in church and we hear that word forgive. It often just sounds like a simple thing or a fast thing or a superficial experience. You know, we saw that clip and the story is unbelievable. But in the clip, Mary, you kind of moved to forgiveness real fast. And I know that is not the first place where your heart went after you lost your son. So would you tell us some of what went on in your heart for that long stretch of time?
Good morning. Yes, I did not move into forgiveness in 3 minutes. Actually, I was a Christian woman that was full of hatred for O'Shea. I wanted him to serve life in prison. I wanted them to take the key and throw it away. He was an animal, and he deserved to be locked up, caged for the rest of his life. And I carried that hatred and bitterness for many, many, many years.
You were saying when the trial happened, which was within a year and a half, something like that, of the death, that at that time you said the words of forgiveness, but you know, maybe we're not even aware of how deep they needed to go.
All right. Yes, at the trial, it took about a year and a half before we got to the actual trial. And I'm a Christian woman, so I know that in order to be forgiven, that I must forgive. So I told him at the trial that I forgave him. And I didn't think it was lip service, but over the years I found out, yes, that's all it was lip service. I was doing what the word says, but it was not really in my heart.
So there was really a long process, and you didn't know at the beginning how long that journey was going to be. One of the things you guys both said yesterday that was so striking is that forgiveness is a journey, it's not a destination.
Yes, it is. It took 12 years for me to get to the place to even go and see O'Shea. And I have that desire to go and see, because I know that there was work that I've been called to do. And I know if I couldn't see him and if I didn't make sure that I had forgiven him, that the work that I've been called to do, I couldn't do it.
But 12 years, a long time, and you really needed that time.
Yes.
So you talk in the video about how over time you came to have a sense that what was going on inside your heart was kind of like a cancer. How long did it take, and how could you tell I'm internally in my spirit going down a road that's the wrong road?
I'd say I think I walked around with hatred in my heart for at least 10 years. Bitterness. I mean, I was just kind of stagnated. My life wasn't moving on. I had to, in order to know my life was moving, I remember getting to this place where I had to look at me and ask myself, who do I think I am? You know, for not forgiving, and this is what the word says. It was just, all I can think of is stagnation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And O'Shea, one of the things you said in the video is that receiving forgiveness is a process. In fact, you said you're still working on that. You're not sure that you're there yet. Tell us a little bit about what does that mean? How do you work on forgiving yourself or receiving forgiveness?
Well, it's a process, like pretty much everything in life. When you violate or, trespass against someone's personage, you have to, if you want forgiveness, if you want to accept it, you have to first acknowledge what you've done, accept responsibility, hold yourself accountable, and you have to find the strength within yourself to bring yourself to that point. And I'm gaining my strength, so to speak, in doing that. And what I'm doing now is kind of I look at the world now as heaven's movie. Those who made it in are looking down upon us. They're seeing comedy, thriller, action, suspense. They're seeing all of this. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, when you're filming a movie, you have to play your role. You have to stick to the script. Sometimes you may mess up. You make a mistake. But those are just that, mistakes in heaven's movie. We get another chance. So,
Man. So you're going through this process, and, we're a community, we're a church. We want to help people in the process of forgiveness. But I know, Mary, you said even though you were part of the church, there were some people who were not helpful for you in that. Tell us a little bit about what that was like and what the hurt of that was like.
I grew up in a Baptist church, and I went to this church for 27 years. And I left that church a year before my son was murdered, and I joined a non-denominational church. And when my son was murdered, my pastor said to me, if you would have prayed more, this would not have happened. Well, I left that church.
Did it just stun you to have somebody say that to you?
Say that to me, yes. And you know, even though I grew up in church, coming out and joining a non-denominational church, I was really learning some things that I didn't learn in the Baptist church. And I thought, wow, this is really something. Before I left the Baptist church, I was saying, you know, there's got to be something more to it than what's happening here. So, I mean, when she said that to me, I mean, I had to think, you know, is that really true?
Yeah.
Is that why this happened? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And then you were saying, too, that there were people where, because it was a long journey for you, some people felt like it ought to be happening faster.
Right. A lot of people say to people who are hurting, you know, aren't you over that yet? Why don't you just move on? That is hard to do. And when I left that church, I joined another non-denominational church. And the pastor, they weren't really supportive of what it was that I know I've been called to do, or even really go and visit them. They were so worried about me getting stuck in grief. But there really wasn't help for me to move on through that grief.
A lot of times we just want to fix people. And, you know, sometimes because we get uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, I feel uncomfortable. So I just want you to be fixed so I don't have to worry about mourning with you.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the price that you might have to pay to mourn with me.
Wow. Wow. Anybody writing this down? Okay, so you're going through this, and then, you know, lots of different points where something happens to move you. One of them is a poem. Another one is a class. Tell us about that.
One day I was asked to teach a class out of a book that's called Total Forgiveness. And I said, okay. But, you know, it just didn't register what was happening. But teaching that class, I began to learn what forgiveness is and what it is not. The Two Mothers poem came into existence after we went through the trial. And one day I opened up a book and it just fell on the page. It had two mothers. And I read it, and it was about two angels in heaven. And because of the crown they had on and the colors that they were wearing, they both knew that they were mothers here on earth. So they began to talk about their sons. And one mother said, I would have taken my son's place at the cross if I could have. And the other mother fell on one knee and said, oh, well, you are she, the mother of Christ. And the mother of Christ lifted her up and kissed a tear from her cheek. And she said, tell me of your son so I may grieve with you. She said, my son is Judas Iscariot. And the poem ended there. So I read it again. And after the second reading, I heard within myself, I want mothers of murdered children and mothers of children that have taken life to come together and heal together.
I want to that's one of the most staggering sentences I have ever heard in my life. You think, you know, and this is heaven's movie, but it's real life. Would you say that one more time, the vision is?
For mothers of murdered children and mothers of children that have taken life to come together and heal together. Well, I laughed. And I thought, you know what, that is totally impossible. That just cannot happen. And I didn't want it to happen. But it is a possibility. This group is in existence today. It came into existence in 2006.
Well, we have, there's cards, two mothers, two sons, from death to life. March, can you put some of the cards, like maybe on the corners here when folks are leaving if they want to get it? And part of what we've done as a church is just to give to that foundation. But one of the things that did for you then was to say, if you're going to move towards this vision, you have work to do with O'Shea.
Yes. I had to make sure that I had forgiven O'Shea. I couldn't see how in the world I could do this work if I had all this hatred and bitterness still going on in my heart. There would be no way I could do that work. So I needed to make sure.
And so the idea came to actually go and visit in prison
Yes.
with the man who took the life of your son.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is what we had was a victim offender dialogue, and that is a restorative justice process through the Department of Corrections. So I had to contact the Department of Corrections and tell them that I wanted to meet with O'Shea. And then a man named Tim Hansen went to O'Shea and asked him to meet with me. And he said, absolutely not.
So, like, O'Shea, what were you thinking? Did this just come totally out of the blue? And what did you think that she might want? What was going on inside you?
I didn't know what to expect. Of course, my initial reaction was, no, it's not going to happen. What for? What I need to see her for so she can cuss me out or call me names or vent on me? I'm not doing it. Didn't want to accept the responsibility or hold myself accountable at that point yet. So look in her face and look at what I've done. So, nah.
Yep.
I pass.
So what did you, when you heard no, what did you think?
Well, I was disappointed, but we decided, and 9 months later, we went back and he asked O'Shea again, and this time he talked to his family, and he decided that he would meet with me.
I just want to pause there for a moment because, again, so often if we get hurt by somebody, you know, if we're going to try forgiveness or reconciliation, it will be with an attitude of, I want it to happen that fast. And maybe I'll take one step towards you, and if you don't respond in exactly the way that I want you to, I'll feel hurt and just erase your name from the list and say, well, I tried, and excuse myself. And to look at reconciliation as a process where it may take days, weeks, months, years, try, fail again. The persistence, you know, for both of you is part of, I mean, there's so much to learn from your story, but the persistence and the need for work is one of the most remarkable parts of it. So you had to kind of humble yourself, gear up your spirit, and try again. And this time around, you thought about it differently. And it was input from other people that helped you think about it differently.
Yeah, I was approached by a caseworker in a facility. She came at me again, and she's just as persistent as Mary. So really, they didn't leave me an option. I had to do it. But, you know, I discussed it with some family members, friends, and I was in a transition in my life at that time anyway. I was trying to let go of some of the other stuff that I was doing and what I was going through. And I said, hey, if I'm ever going to be able to call myself a man, then I have to put on a man's clothes. I have to walk in a man's shoes. And the biggest part of being a man is accepting responsibility, holding yourself accountable, facing some of the things that you've done. And as I explained to you earlier, the process of the 3 R's, which is I had to retrain myself, retrain my thinking, retrain my responses. Then I had to retire the nonsense, you know, and retire some of those bitter feelings that I had, just put them in a retirement and then reposition myself to get ready for something greater, something bigger. So
Retrain, retire, and reposition.
And I remembered it this time.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking to make a good sermon sometimes. So, yeah.
So.
And again, that's where, you know, I think God just works in such remarkable ways. Your persistence gave an opportunity. And O'Shea, for you, that was a step towards responsibility. It had to take courage, had to take humility to be willing to do that. And again, part of what happens through this process is there's so many crossroads, so many choice points where somebody could have pulled back, but you don't, you keep going forward. And that's what makes, you know, the presence of grace or healing possible. Okay, so this day's going to come. It's not something that you do casually. So, like, who else is involved? What goes into this first meeting? What was it like?
The first meeting, and before that first meeting, you know, I had to do some preparation work on myself. You know, I had to get to a place of forgiving myself. I had to repent for my feelings and the thoughts I had about him. I just had to go and be for real with myself before I could move on any further. My friend Regina and my sister in the Lord, who's here with us today, Regina worked with me, talked with me, and got me to a place to see that, you know, I was not going to see a 16-year-old boy. He was 16 when he took my son's life, but that I was going to see a grown man, and that I was going to see a human being, not that animal that I suppose he was. So that day, it was myself, Regina, Tim from the Department of Corrections, and Michelle, who was a social worker. And Michelle and Tim were the facilitators for victim-offender dialogue. We were on our way up the ramp, and I got halfway up, and I just broke down, and I just said, God, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to do this. I can't do this. And I tell you, it's good that he sends us out 2 by 2. And he sends us with the right person. And I tell you, Regina just kind of pushed me up the ramp. And we got inside, and I had to go clean up my face because I was really, really boo-hooing. And we went through the metal detector and that big metal door, and we were inside the prison area. And there was a nice young lady there that was going to be working with us. She was the guard that day. And I had told her, I said, look, I couldn't bring my purse in here. I couldn't bring my Bible in here. The only thing I could bring was my ID. And I told her, I said, I'm a person, I cannot tolerate dryness. I said, so if you don't give me some lotion, nothing's happening here today. Very serious. I was very serious. And she said, okay, ma'am, go sit in the conference room and I'll bring you lotion. And she did. And I used it and passed it on. Michelle used it and passed it on. Regina got the lotion, used it, but then she began to examine the bottle. And she said, Mary, you better take this lotion back and look at it. I took the lotion back and I looked at her, and it said, the title was Beyond Belief. I was like, beyond belief? That's exactly what's happening here. It's beyond belief that I'm sitting here waiting for them to bring in the man that's taken my son's life. And I tell you, that whole meeting was beyond belief. We went through 4 2-hour preparation meetings with the facilitators before we met it, and we had to tell them why we wanted to meet. And that was really the main, they wanted to know why we wanted to meet, and they'd say such as, well, what if you hear this about your son? Would you be able to handle that? So it was kind of things like that, but they really wanted to know our motives. And I told them, I said, hey, I want to know why he changed his name. That seemed to happen immediately after he got to Stillwater. I wanted to know why he had taken my son's life. And I wanted to make sure I had forgiven him. See, and I always thought, you know, when you go to court, I didn't think there would ever be another side of the story. I always thought that, hey, you go to court, the truth and nothing but the truth comes forth. But don't believe everything you read in the newspapers, everything you hear on the news. Don't believe everything that goes on in court, because it does not necessarily have to be true. But that's what I told them, those 3 things. And we only talked about one of those things during our meeting, and that was the forgiveness.
And I just want to, again, pause a moment, because it's like, here in this story, there's a whole craft or discipline around forgiveness and reconciliation. And things like to have 4 2-hour meetings before you would come face to face. Where if you have a hurt with somebody, you know, it may not be wise to just immediately show up without having prepared.
Right.
And to think about what's going on in my spirit, what do I want, how do I want to say it. And I would imagine, Mary, you know, initially thinking, this is about the wrong the other person has done, and that you would have to look at things and repent and confess and see stuff in your own heart.
Right.
You know, it's not something, when I first thought we were going to talk about it, I wasn't even expecting that part of the story. So, O'Shea, you guys meet, and Mary comes in. What do you think's going to happen? What does she say? How does that unfold for you?
Didn't know what to expect. Didn't know if when she came in, she was gonna throw something at me, book, chair. She was gonna cuss me out, try to attack me or whatever, which she would have been justified. But I didn't know what to expect, so I just went in there just to see what was gonna happen and to try to give her the closure that she needed. But when she spoke those first words, you know, I don't know you, you don't know me, let's just get to know each other, that just totally set me calm. Because here it is, someone that was interested in knowing the other side of the story or getting to know me before they pass judgment. And, you know, from that moment on, I went in there, you know, to trust the process, to allow everything to take place the way that it was supposed to without being resistant, without getting in the way as we tend to do sometimes in our life. We tend to get in our own way of our own progress and good things and blessings that happen. So I just decided to get out the way, remove my ego, which is easing God out, and to let him do the work.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it strikes me too that opening line of "I don't know you, you don't know me," it was the right thing in the sense that it wasn't bitter and vindictive, but it wasn't pretending like things are better than they are. It was kind of creating space where you would have the freedom to be able to respond, and you could begin to look at what a relationship might be like.
Yes.
And how did it go by the end of the meeting? How did the meeting end up? Do you want to tell us that, or would you rather not?
I'd rather not, but I will.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of embarrassing, you know. The meeting was so good, so great that really didn't want it to end, but wanted it to end on a positive note. So as I was getting up to get ready to leave to be escorted out, I looked across the table at Mary and asked her, you know, could I give her a hug? You know, because I just wanted to show her that I was being sincere and genuine. And she agreed, which surprised me. So as she walked around the table and I walked over to greet her and I gave her a hug, it was just like everything, the floodgates just opened. She started crying hysterically, and I'm trying to hug her and hold her up. And mind you, I've been in prison for 12 years at this point, around hardened criminals, a whole bunch of stuff, and right now is the most scariest moment in my life. Like, this lady is crying, what am I gonna do? Somebody help me. You know, so.
Crying ladies can be pretty scary.
You know, so I'm sitting here struggling, trying to hold her up, and, you know, it was a blessing though, because I was able to show her that I'm there in your pain, even though I'm the one that caused it. Wow. And I believe that was a moment that our bond, you know, started to form.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. So then this relationship begins to develop. Mm-hmm. Where in the world did the idea come from that you might end up living as neighbors?
Well, when O'Shea was released from prison in 2009, December 2009, in March, from death to life, and some nuns that live in our area, we call them Sisters in the Hood.
It's a famous order. Yeah.
We came together and gave him a welcome home party. And
Did you all catch that? Is that cool?
Yeah. And we had about 30, 35 people that came, and all these people, most of them did not know O'Shea. They just knew him through the story that I had been telling. And they told O'Shea, you know, what they could do to support him. And I mean, it just went way beyond what I expected. And after that, my landlord, he talked to me and he asked me how I would feel about O'Shea moving next door. Well, after O'Shea and I met initially, and I started going around sharing the story at the different prisons, someone said, well, when O'Shea gets out, what if he moves back to the neighborhood? I said, oh, that's fine. I said, he can even move next door, you know? And I'll be able to keep a better eye on him. So there's power in our words. You gotta watch what you say. And so my landlord said, you know, what do you think about O'Shea? Would you have a problem with O'Shea moving next door? I said, O'Shea doesn't want to move next door to me. And he said, but what do you think about it if he did? I said, well, hey, I think it'll be all right, So he told me that he had asked O'Shea and that O'Shea had agreed. I found it hard to believe, but he had agreed. So, and it was fine.
And that was 2 years ago?
No, last October.
Last October.
Yeah.
So, O'Shea, how's it going living next door to Mary?
I think when I you knew I was going there, huh? Yeah. I think when I agreed, I had a temporary moment of insanity. But no, it's going great. I mean, it gives someone else to help keep things in perspective for me.
Yeah.
So when I go out throughout my day, come home from work, sometimes I may see Mary, we stand on the porch and we discuss how the day went, things that we have going on. Right before I head out to school, she get a chance to harass me about, my company or whatever I'm doing, the decisions that I'm making. That's the part that I said, when I agreed I was temporary insane. But she's like another mother, so it's like coming home and being able to speak to your mother about how your day is going, finding out how her day is going, and then, proceeding with the rest of your day. So it's a blessing. Sometimes whenever I'm feeling down and out or I feel like things aren't working, I get discouraged or whatever, I can look at her face and say, hey, she gave me the chance. I need to give myself a chance.
Okay, now we got to stop because I'm going to start getting emotional and you're not going to like that at all.
And I'm going to leave.
I know you are. I know you are.